What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the next iteration in this DaVinci Resolve tutorial. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just start off and say I am super duper excited for this tutorial, so much that I went on ahead and threw on a bow tie and a suit for you guys. That's how awesome what we're about to start learning is going to be. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at our curriculum here, and we can kind of take a look and see what we've got. So today we're going to actually get into the color tab. I'm going to introduce you guys to the color and kind of explain a few things and just kind of give you a quick tour. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the software and let's not waste any time. All right. So here we are in DaVinci Resolve, and first off, to get started with everything, as you guys already know, we need some footage to work with. So I'm going to go over here and grab a quick shot of, let's just grab a shot of this mailbox here, and let's bring that into our timeline, okay? So now once we're in the timeline, we're going to actually skip Fusion, of course, as we discussed. We're going to actually go over to the color tab, okay? Now, boy, let me tell you guys, this is where a lot of magic happens. In fact, this is where a majority of the look of things can kind of come into play, okay? You can create some amazing looks and vibes in just the color tab, okay? Now, I'm not going to overwhelm you guys, so we're just going to do a quick tour, as I mentioned, right? This is just an introduction. So first off, let's go ahead and start with the top left corner. So as you guys can see, you have something called gallery. And if you go ahead and click on that, you can actually enable the gallery, and the gallery is things like your stills. It's going to be like your power grades and things like that, things that you have saved, like templates and so to speak, right? Okay, and if this is not like snapped here on the left hand side, okay, you can actually click on this little button right here, and then it should appear here as well. Okay, now the next thing I want to show you guys is LUTs. Okay, so if you guys click on LUTs, you guys can see that there should be a folder full of LUTs in here. You probably don't have all the ones that I have. I have a bunch of them, and you can download these on any kind of platform like Environmental Elements or anything like that. But I just wanted to at least show you guys you can have access to LUTs, and they should look something like little heads, and then it should show you like a preview of what that is as you hover over it. Okay, and that is a cool thing right there, right out the gate. As you guys can see, as I hover over these different LUTs, it kind of gives you like a preview as you hover your cursor over each one. Okay, so you can kind of see how it will impact your video. So definitely feel free to play around with some of those. Just be careful with some of them. Some of them can be really, really heavy on your computer, and they can actually completely crash it depending on what kind of machine you're working on. Okay. Moving on to the next piece is the media pool. So if you guys click on that, you can actually get access to the media pool. Now, this is the exact same media pool that you see here in the edit page, and the exact same one on the cut page, and the exact same one in the actual media pool here. Okay, so it's just another way of viewing something that you guys have already seen. Okay. And then lastly, we have clips. So I'm going to click on clips, and I actually had it up and running actually before I clicked on that. And you'll actually see that the clips are right here. Okay, so if I had more clips in my timeline, if I go to edit here and I drag in the car clip, and then I drag in, pizza here, well, you'll see now if we go over back to the color tab, you can actually see that all three of those clips are here, and you can actually pick those. That is a really, really useful feature, especially when we get into remote grading, which will come into another video later down the road. Okay, but definitely I would recommend enabling the clips. And you can actually enable specific types of clips, ones that are in certain groupings, like ones that you have flagged and ones that you've colored a certain color, and so on and so forth. So it's really, really neat and really, really cool things you can kind of do with the different clips here in this little drop down arrow. Okay. Next thing I'm going to show you guys is, let's go ahead and go back to LUTs here, and that way this is mostly what you're going to probably want to be looking at when you get into the color page. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to show you guys is down here on the bottom, okay? And I know you guys are probably looking at this thing over here. We're going to get into those nodes in just a minute. But right now, I want to show you guys the left-hand side here in the bottom. This is where you can actually make a lot of your color adjustments. And I'm going to go ahead and just say right out the gate, you do not, and I mean you do not want to just start willy-nilly messing around with these dials and things. There are specific workflows that actually preserve data, and they just work better and they make better results. It's just color science, and we're gonna get into that a little bit later. And I'm no expert in it, but I can tell you right now that I have done a lot of things to just get really, really good results, and I have countless of videos on our website at cbcinematics.com where you can kind of see some really beautiful imagery that we get. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump back into the software. So now that we are here again, like I said, you don't want to go nilly-willy with these things, and but these are different things. So your primaries is what you're going to mostly start with is this button here. But then you also have this thing called HDR, which you can click as well, which stands for high dynamic range, which is when you have like extreme brights and extreme darks in your image, how you kind of bring those to balance, okay? And then of course, if you are shooting in raw footage, you can actually edit in raw, okay? Majority of people are probably not going to be in this unless they're shooting on a Blackmagic RAW camera, or they have some ProRes RAW file that they're converting into a RAW format, okay? But I just want to at least introduce that to you guys here, all right? We won't get into color matching right now, because I'll show you guys later down the road things you can do with that. And then I'll just show you real quick, you have like motion effects too. Again, things that we're not really getting to, but mostly what you're going to want to work with is color wheels and the HDR grade right here, okay? Moving on to the next piece while we're in this portion of the screen, I will show you guys that there are additional wheels that you can click on, which is this little log wheels right here, and then you can get into your shadows, your midtones, your highlights right here as well. Because if you click on this one, you probably wonder, well, all I got is lift, gamma, gain, where's my shadows and highlights and stuff like that. We do have that down here as well, but there are some use cases for these as opposed to these down here at the bottom, okay? And of course, all of this corresponds to your image, right? Your color temperature, your tint, your contrast, your pivot, your details, you know, your saturation or boost in colors, shadows, highlights, you know, that's pretty much this whole box right here, okay? This whole box is pretty much all of that, all right? Now we're going to move on to the next section, which is this section of the video, or the color tab. And more likely, you're probably going to start off with this, and you're probably not going to even have this histogram up. You may not have the vector scope up. You might have something like waveform. So this might look similar. I can't remember what the default looks like, but if it doesn't look like this, I'll show you guys exactly how you can get it like this, okay? But first off, we're going to click on this wave here, which is actually not wave, but it's actually your curves screen. Okay, and curves is how you can make, you know, your S curve and kind of create like a nice S, right? A little S right there to give yourself a nice balanced image. And we're going to go ahead and reset that. You guys have seen that before, right? In the inspector, where we go ahead and reset things. So you can actually do that right here. And when you click on this reset button, it actually resets this whole section here. As you can see, this section has its own. So if I bring the offset over into complete purple, as you guys can see, it did affect the image in purple. We can actually click on this little reset button and it will reset this, but not the curves. And let me demonstrate that for an extreme purpose. Here you guys can see red here. We're going to reset right here. And that reset just this loop here. But let's say you did a bunch of these and you wanted to do all of it. You can reset all of this, but as you can see, it did not mess with our curve, okay? So just keep in mind that you have reset buttons for each section of the color tab as well. So we'll go ahead and click on this reset button right here to bring it back to normal. And then lastly, we have the scope section. The scope section is going to be something that you're going to want to look at very, very closely, okay? The human eye has a way to adapt, believe it or not. For example, have you ever looked at a word for so long and it starts to look like it's spelled wrong, or you know, you look at something that looks really bad and then it starts to actually look normal over time? Well, that's because our eye and our brain is designed to actually compensate. It's actually very smart and very intuitive, and so that can happen when you're editing. And so you're going to want to rely on these scopes to make sure that you are editing things properly. And then of course we've got all of this at the top, okay? All this at the top, and then we have two more sections. We have this section and then we have this section, which we'll get into next. This at the top is basically going to give you access to a few more options for your color. So we'll go ahead and click on the color warper. The color warper is actually really, really interesting. You can actually come up here and click like the tomato, for example, on your image. It will actually show you where that color is, and you can make that not as red. And as you can see, we're taking out all the red in the image. Again, using your reset button, we can actually reset that back to normal. Moving on to the next portion, which is the qualifier. The qualifier is really, really cool. You can actually make selections of specific tones and kind of make changes to those tones. It's actually used a lot in skin tone balancing and retaining skin tones and correcting it, okay? And we'll get into how to use that for things like that later. So yeah. And then next we have a power window, Windows. So if you click on Windows, this is really, really cool. Let's say, for example, you wanted to edit only a specific part of your video, where you can actually click on the pencil, for example, and you can draw like a little position around it and make a little selection. And then you can actually change this all to blue. As you can see, it's affecting everything in that little section. So that's where a power window comes into play. Really cool, really useful as we get later on into more advanced stuff. Okay, and of course if you want to reset that back, you can just go ahead and delete what you've done. And actually that message is actually perfect. If you click on delete right now, it's going to say default windows can be deleted. That's because this is a default window. So in fact, you can just go ahead and click on the reset button here, and this will reset that back to normal, and then we'll reset the color back to normal. Okay, all right, moving on to the next piece. Tracking is, oh man, you can do so many things with tracking. Make changes. So you know how we made changes to, let's say for example we want this one tomato to be a certain color. You could actually create a little track. You could first select it using the power window like this by clicking and circle around it, and now you have the tomato here. And let's say the video clip move, you can go over here to track, and then you can track it as it moves in the video clip. Okay, so tracking is a really cool feature and something that you're going to be using quite a bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and reset that back by clicking our reset button here and clicking our reset button here as well for the window. We are back to normal. Okay, moving to magic mask. Magic mask is really cool. So let's say for example you wanted to select a certain item, and maybe you don't want to use a power window. Maybe you wanted to select a specific item and you wanted to track it as well. You can actually just draw a line instead of selecting it by hitting a bunch of points, and it will actually try to select that space by just drawing a line on the screen like I just did. If you hit this toggle, I think it's called toggle mask overlay. Yeah, that's what it's called. You can actually see that it actually highlighted the selection that I have here, and you can turn it off to go back to normal, and then you can turn it back on again to see the highlighted selection. So it's like another way of selecting things without drawing like a big mask all over the place. You can just kind of draw a quick line, and then you can track that one line. Okay, and of course my cat comes on screen when we're filming this. All right, we're gonna reset that back to normal. And then blur is actually really cool as well too. And all right, she's gonna be all up in the screen. Hang on guys. All right, so here we are and picking up on blur. Blur is really cool. You can actually blur your actual footage, which is pretty straightforward, and HV ratio as well. So you can kind of change how that blur is looking overall. Okay, so this is pretty much everything with blur. And then we've got keying. Keying is kind of hard to explain. So basically, if you have something selected, let me give you a perfect example of this. And let's go ahead and select something here. Actually, I don't think you even need something selected. If you just go ahead and hit key, go back to key. Let's go ahead and add a color grade onto here. Okay. Now you can see I added this grade, but let's say you didn't want that grade to be 100%. Like, what if you wanted it to be like have a small percentage of that effect? Well, that's your key output, and you can actually change that to like a certain percentage. So you can actually change this, and as you can see, it's not affecting the image a little bit. And now if you want to see before and after of any change that you ever make, you can go ahead and hit this little sparkle with a little circle bypass color grade fusion effect button. Ooh, that's a mouthful. But you can go ahead and click on this, and you can see before, after, before, after. You kind of get the idea. So you can see the key is making that possible. But if we reset the key back to its default, you'll see that it will put that effect on here 100%, and 1 is considered 100%. Okay, and of course you can do key input as well. We'll get into this a little bit later, and then the qualifiers as well too. And you can automate all of this stuff too, and animate all this stuff, which is amazing. And next we're going to get into size inputting. So let's say now that we are in input sizing, so let's say for example you did have something selected. So let's say for example we had let's just put a square instead of a pencil. So we have this small square, and we're going to put this over, whoops, we're going to actually change its size right here, make it a little smaller. Then we're going to go over here to input sizing. So you can actually change the selections. You can change the input of the selection. You can change the node itself. This is mostly what I like to use. And then of course I'll pan and move a part of that image over to here. So a lot of people use this to make different effects, like glitch effects. They'll do this and then animate that stuff, and that's how you get all these cool little glitchy pieces of or particles of your footage. Okay, another use case for this, actually we'll go ahead and hit the reset button. Another use case for this is, let's say for example you had like, you know, a spot like this glass here. Just to give you guys a quick example what you can do with this thing, and you have this glass, and let's say you select a spot over here and you wanted to clone this over to here. Well, Well, this is how you would do something like that. You would go over here to the node, select that piece that we have right here, and then you would click on the node sizing, and then you would say, hey, pan over and copy that over into here, and then you could copy over that glass. Okay, so that's actually how a lot of people remove items in video, and then they of course will track that using the tracker. So really cool advanced stuff, but I just figured I would just give you a quick tour and overview of what that is. And now the last few things I'm going to show you guys with the color tab is the nodes. So the nodes, you guys are probably wondering about this right here. So nodes is actually how you're going to build your color trees, and I actually have some that I actually use. I'll just kind of give you guys an example of what we're going to start learning how to build, which is going to be stuff like this to create a nice image. And you can actually see this already affected our image that I have built in before, after, okay? And we'll get into how you can build these cool looking node trees and stuff like that too, okay? And they do have a purpose, all right? And then of course we're gonna lastly talk about effects. Obviously you can put effects onto your footage. A lot of the effects that you have seen in the edit page, these should be an exact replica of those that you're familiar with. So you probably wonder, well, hey, there's light rays and glow and things like that. And you probably wonder, well, why do you need that in the color page? Remember we talked about selecting different things. Let's say for example I select just a tomato right here. Well, let's say for example you only wanted glow on just that one tomato. So now you can put glow and drag it and drop it onto this node, and now glow is only affecting that one. So if I hit the gamma and the gain right here, as you can see, we're actually affecting the glow only on this piece. We can hit spread, we can bring our gain even more just for extremity purposes so you guys can see that it is affecting it. And as you can see, we are making just a tomato glow before, after, pretty wild, right? So that's why you guys should have some familiarity of the library of these effects, and then you can go into the settings of those effects and then make your changes accordingly. But now you can start to see how this kind of comes together, which is why I've been teaching things in this order. Okay, if you don't see this right here, just click on the effects button right here. You can click on that, and if you don't see nodes, click on nodes right here. And if you don't see a timeline down here like I do right here in the bottom, you can just simply click on timeline, and that will bring the timeline back. I usually don't actually have the timeline on, so I don't know why that was even on. I don't really need that. I usually like to just see my clips, and that's just my personal preference. But you guys come in here and doll it up the way you guys like, okay? So that is pretty much the color page. I mean, wow, we went through a lot of information. I did kind of run through that pretty quickly. Definitely feel free to slow this video down a little bit in the YouTube settings down below, or feel free to rewatch this video. I definitely look forward to getting into now more the nitty gritty and things. We're going to start talking about those nodes next, and kind of get into different ways you can use them. And then we'll get into more of like the depth of LUTs and things like that as well too. Okay. But introduction to color, I think you guys have a pretty good idea of what the color tab can do. And definitely feel free to play around with it in the meantime until our next video. Okay. So anyway, guys, I hope you guys are having a wonderful evening, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.